In 2004, the second day of Pentecost was removed as a public holiday in Sweden. But what is Pentecost, and how far back in history do we need to look to understand its meaning? Many would consider Pentecost as a Christian tradition, but if we are to understand its meaning, we have to look at its Jewish origins. In the Hebrew Bible, we can read about 3 pilgrimage festivals that the ancient Israelites had to observe. The first is the Passover, which commemorates the Israelites' freedom from slavery. The second is Shavuot, or Pentecost, which commemorates that God gave the law to Moses on Mount Sinai. And the third one, which falls in the autumn, is Sukkot, or Festival of Tabernacles, where the Israelites were to build small huts and live in them to commemorate the journey through the desert. In the Israelite religion, as we have it in the Hebrew Bible, the number 7 symbolizes fullness, perfection, and the entire created world. And in the Hebrew Bible, the Israelites were to count 7 weeks, that is 7 weeks of 7 days from the festival of Passover, and then on that day celebrate the second pilgrimage festival, that is Pentecost. Because of the counting of these weeks, the festival is called weeks, or in Hebrew, Shavuot, and the festival still goes by that name for Jews and Samaritans as they celebrate it today. Because 7 weeks is equivalent to 50 days, including the first and the last day, the festival is also known as Pentecosti in ancient Jewish sources, and this is where we get the name Pentecost from. During the festival, the Israelites were to celebrate the completion of the spring harvests and commemorate the law that God gave with fire to Moses on Mount Sinai. The law constituted their community and the will of God, and this law enabled them to live by God's ethical standard. In the book of Acts in the New Testament, we read that the disciples of Jesus were present in Jerusalem 50 days after the Passover when Jesus died and was resurrected, as the city was celebrating the festival of Pentecost. Suddenly, the Spirit of God came as a strong wind and placed itself as small tongues of fire on top of each of the disciples' heads. And they began to proclaim the message about Jesus in many languages unknown to themselves. It was from here that the Christian Pentecost started to take form. Against the background of Judaism in the 1st century, we can begin to understand how the early Jewish followers of Jesus suddenly saw their Jewish festival in a new light. That new light was their experience of the Holy Spirit in the form of flames, which made them reinterpret their Pentecost festival. Just as Passover had acquired new meaning for them in light of what happened to Jesus, Pentecost also acquired new meanings for them. Pentecost was still about God coming to his people, establishing his community, proclaiming his message with fire, and making his ethics known so that the people could live according to them. But at this second Pentecost, God did not come with fire on the mountain resulting in fear, but with a little flame for each resulting in joy and confidence. This second Pentecost became a celebration of the community of those who had received God's Spirit within them, who would help them live according to God's ethics. These points are strikingly similar to the Jewish Pentecost, and it would be wrong to see this new Christian Pentecost as something un-Jewish. Here we can see how the early Jesus believers understood Pentecost in a new way, a way that was not at odds with the old way and the old meanings, but drew on the exact same points. Research into early Christianity in the last decades has stressed that the early followers of Jesus did not understand themselves to belong to a different religion than true Judaism. Also in our time, the significance of Pentecost has changed. Pentecost used to be celebrated in Sweden for 5 days from Saturday evening before Pentecost Sunday, then Pentecost Sunday, and then the following 3 weekdays. But in 1772, the last 2 days were taken away, and further in 2004, the second day of Pentecost, the Monday after Pentecost Sunday, was removed as a public holiday. This was done to make room in the holiday calendar to promote the Swedish National Day, the 6th of June, as a public holiday. The second day of Pentecost as a public holiday was removed in order to boost the National Day, and this can be interpreted from a wish to strengthen cohesion in Swedish society. When the issue was discussed politically, secular symbols such as the flag and the language were highlighted, together with Swedish history, cultural heritage, and the special organization of society, as elements that deserved to be celebrated more by the Swedish population. Setting aside a day to celebrate these was argued to be a way of strengthening national identity in a time of increased internationalization. Protests were heard from the church organizations, which preferred that Pentecost should retain its status as a holiday. However, the majority of Swedes did not mourn Pentecost Monday as a religious holiday, but rather the loss of a long early summer weekend for leisure and celebration. The removal of the second day of Pentecost as a public holiday in Sweden follows a general trend in Western societies to remove non-core religious holidays, especially if they fall on regular weekdays. Just like the early Jesus believers reinterpreted Pentecost, we today are also prioritizing our holidays from our contemporary situation. My name is Conrad Elmelund at the Center for Theology and Religious Studies at Lund University. Thank you for listening.